Yo, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video. My name is Chazit and today I've got a slightly different video for you guys. Now you may have noticed Riot have just dropped a new map. They've announced it's going to be launching in Act 3, so only a week's time from now, which is really exciting. I wanted to go through and sort of analyse the video in a little bit more detail, give you guys sort of some more context around what we're seeing, and of course just get a bit hyped for it because it looks freaking awesome. Now, no prizes for guessing that it is a ice map. I think Riot have been extremely obvious with that, with both things in game and the teaser video that they put on Twitter a few days ago, with the one with all the icy bits shooting out and the iced pane of glass. People on Twitter worked out that these Russian letters spelt out 5, and it is of course the 5th map, so that does make a whole heap of sense. Now, there's loads of different elements of this map that I think are really cool. It's quite technical. There's loads of little nooks and crannies, and I want to go through those in a bit more detail in a minute. But just as an overview, this appears to be a two-site map, and sort of spawns are dead on in the middle. There's loads of inside as well as outside areas, and also some bridges. Quite a good use of heaven and sort of lower down areas as well. There's also ropes. There's quite a few ropes in this, and Riot clearly like that. They obviously used it in Split. But there's also different mechanics on each map they've released so far. Bind obviously has the portals, as I said, Split has the ropes, and this one has zip lines, which I think is awesome. I'm not quite sure how it's going to work out yet, because I think, certainly from what we can see in this video, they're quite open, and I'd imagine it's going to be quite easy to shoot people off it. But I suppose if you're looking to rotate round onto a different site and need to do it quite quickly, then that could be quite useful. You don't have to go up and down ramps, you don't have to take falling damage, you can just go straight across. Riot are also getting a bit more adventurous with the sites they create, obviously using the zip lines for example, but this site here has at least 4 entrances that I can count. You can see the lines on the floor, there's the door at the back, and of course there's the zip line areas. So there's so many different places that you can hide, access it from, like you can push from loads of different angles, and I think that's going to make the game probably a lot harder, but a lot more interesting, because you can hold areas down a lot less easily, which, makes the game a lot more interesting. And I think one of the hardest things at the moment is if a site's completely locked down, it's almost impossible to take it as an attacking side. So I think hopefully that will add a little bit more of an element of that, and it'd be a lot more competitive than some of the other maps, which are extremely biased. Split, for example, is extremely defense biased and very hard to attack on. Hopefully this will be a bit of the opposite. I think that would be quite an interesting thing to see. Now I'm going to go through the images one by one and a bit more slowed down so we can see them in some more detail. I don't think we're actually going to get any play on the ship per se, which is kind of sad. I think that would be quite a cool thing to do, but I think most of it takes place in the port and a certain amount in buildings, and I think there's a little bit in the mountain as well. I think that's one of the spawns, which is quite cool. I think we see that better in one of the later photos. But moving on, we have what I think is one of the sites. Now, the reason I think that is because you've got numerous entrances in. I can count 1 on the left, 1 in the middle, and then 2 on the right. Plus, there's also the sort of double box entrance. If you can see, just where the double box is, here's the one that's open, there's actually a little bridge across that you can access from the building, and I'll zoom in on that so you can see it a little bit easier. But what I would imagine is this is going to be one of the sites. I think it's set up so obviously to be a site. You've got multiple angles that you can cover. There's also the slanted boxes right in the middle of the site, which I think adds an interesting element. And again, the aesthetic looks really good. You've got the Raging Knight there. The boxes are really cool. I think it's going to be a really hard one to both attack and defend. Again, this has got 4 entrances, which is a lot more complex than the ones we've had already. I think the max we've had so far is, 3 entrances on some maps. So adding a 4th one to that, you have to use more abilities for a start, but it makes it a lot easier to attack and a lot harder to lock the site down. So that's going to be obviously a great change. Now here we can see from the other side coming down one of the entrances, and you can see the rope that opens up into the double container. Now I think that's a really interesting place to put it, because it can be used both attacking and defensively. I think mainly defensive. People can quite nicely hold the entire line from the heaven area, and that's going to add certainly an interesting element to it. But I think obviously Riot like their ropes. They've used them in multiple places on this map, and I think they've had obviously some really good feedback from Split, and I'm not surprised because it is a really cool element. And here you can see from above that site again, there's loads of different places you can hide. The 4 entrances are there. And I think the colouring's quite intriguing, actually. It might be quite hard to spot certain agents. I'm thinking Sage, maybe, with her ice. It'll be interesting to see how they do that. And obviously, we're going to see what the new agent's going to be like and how that's going to interact with it all. So I'm looking forward to that. But there's loads of different places that you can lock down. I mean, Omen can have an absolute field day with some of these places. I think Jet's going to be very powerful here as well, given the fact there's so many angles to peek. And having a quick escape is going to be very important. I think there's many agents that are going to be good here. I can't imagine there's going to be a single one that's going to struggle. Now, I mentioned earlier the little bridge that gets you from the building into the top of the container box. And here it is. There's different ways of doing it. Obviously, you can use the ropes. You can access it this way. I suppose it gives both attacker and defender a way of getting to it, which is really important because it means that the defenders can't just sit there and, camp all the angles, because that would be extremely hard to get someone out of otherwise. So that's a good way of doing it. You can also attack from behind, obviously down this corridor. I think this corridor is going to be an operator's absolute heaven. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that's implemented. But I think there's quite a few different places that you can use an op here. Not just this angle, but there's loads of long open corridors. So it might be a interesting map for getting your head taken off every 5 seconds. Now, looking inside the buildings, and this is a bit of a flavour for what they're going to be like. Quite wiggly, windy, and plenty of angles. You can obviously see there's multiple different places you're going to have to check if you're attacking this, and vice versa defending. On the left there appears to be a doorway. Now I'm not sure if that's going to be one of the doorways like we have on Ascent. That being said, there is an electric sort of wire coming from the vending machine to the left. So that might be a bit of an indication to that. I think that would be cool if they implemented that in here as well. Obviously they'd have the zip lines from Split, they'd have the doors from Ascent, and now we'd have the new zip lines. And as we can see, here they are. Now, I'm not going to cover this in loads of detail as I went over it a minute ago, but I really am impressed by this. I just wonder how it's going to be implemented. I'd love to hear what you guys' opinion is going to be of this. Do let me know in the comment section down below if you think this is going to be a interesting use or whether it's going to be an absolute, useless one. I just think if someone's attacking and you're in the middle of the zip line, then you're going to get taken out like a turkey shoot. So as I said, interesting to see what they're going to do here. And of course, if you're attacking this, then there's loads of different places to plant the spike. There's loads of angles. It's a really, really complex site to go to. Now, there's other little flavour bits in here as well. There's obviously this kitchen. Someone's left their pizza out. Not quite sure why they do that. What sort of masochist leaves pizza? They obviously... Well, it's obviously not a very good pizza, I suppose. Getting it delivered to a middle of a naval base, I can't imagine it is a particularly tasteful joint. They've also left the milk out, and that really irritates me, because that's just going to spoil. I mean, what are you doing, guys? Come on. Now, I think this is like a cryogenic area. It's something out of Future Armor by the looks of it. I mean, it looks very similar, right? But I think it's something similar to what we have in Bind, the reactor there. I think it's just like a cool thing that you can see through a window. I'm not sure we're actually going to have any interaction with it. I think it's just artwork, essentially. Now, here's one of those horrible op corridors that I mentioned. As I said, this is going to be an absolute hell to get down. If there's anyone sat there at the end with a sniper, you're in a whole deal of pain. So it'll be interesting to see how people cope with that. I wonder whether or not it's something that can be easily set up on, or whether it's too close to the attacker side for it to be much of an issue. Now, this bit here I originally thought was going to be one of the spike areas, but actually having looked at it again, I think that's the defender spawn in the sort of archway bit. It looks like there's radionite stuff in there, so you would initially think, that's obviously a site. But if you look at the next photo, which I'm going to put on screen now, it doesn't look quite so easy to see. I think, as you can see, the people at the bottom of the screen are, I would say, imagine the attackers, and they're moving into different areas. And you've got the site on the left, you've got the site in the building on the right, and dead ahead is the defenders spawn. So that's the only thing that really makes sense to me. I can't see how else they're going to do it unless they have people spawn really next to each other, but that doesn't make any sense at all. So I think that's a spawn. I think you've got two sites, spawns completely opposite sides to each other, and some really interesting long corridors in the middle. So yeah, very complex map. I've done an absolutely excellent job on this, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how pros play it. I think initially it's going to be a bit of a mess on sort of casual servers, or casual players, because people aren't going to know how to play this, and it's until we sort of get a bit more time to sit there and work it out and work all the different angles and sort of how you can hold things, then it will be a very complex one. But I think we're getting more to the sort of the Counter-Strike style maps. They're quite complex. You really need to learn it like to the nth degree. I think the thing that Counter-Strike obviously has on Valorant is the skill ceiling's a lot higher. Valorant's a lot easier to pick up. So hopefully adding these harder maps in will draw more people from Counter-Strike, more of the professionals across, and if anything else, just boost the game even further. I think it's got an amazing platform to grow and certainly to build esports on. And if there's anything that Riot do know, it's building an esport. Obviously, having done League of Legends to quite the extent they did was incredible. So if they can do anything like that with Valorant, then I think we're in store for a cracking game. But that is all from me for now, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please do drop it a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff. I produce videos twice a week. Not always like this, admittedly. I tend to do guides, news, leaks, anything coming up in Valorant. But if that's the sort of content you want to see more of and you like the sound of me, which is always great, then do drop me a subscription. You won't regret it, I promise. Hopefully I will see you in the next video. And until then...